This is draft season presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. I am John Schmelk. As always, joined by Tony Pauline from Essentially Sports. We have our flights booked. We have our hotels set up. We are ready to go for Shrine and Senior Bowl next week. You have a good Shrine Bowl preview coming up on next week's show with Eric Galko, as well as a review of the College Football Playoffs National Championship game. Then when we're leaving Shrine, we'll do a Shrine review. I guess we'll record that on Sunday, Tony. And then we will do a Senior Bowl preview as well. That'll be our show the following week. So that's what you have coming up. And obviously, you have our Senior Bowl review coming up that following week. So the next 3 weeks will be very busy on draft season as we kind of rev up the draft process here, Tony. For today's show, we are going to do the next 12 picks of our mock draft. We did 1 through 12 yesterday. We have the order of the first 24 picks that are now for sure based on what happened in the wild card round of the NFL playoffs. So we will go through that. But first, we're going to lead off, Tony, with our review of the College Football Playoff semifinals. One really good game, one not so really good game. It was funny. So my wife and I are trying to get through Stranger Things. We have like 2 episodes to go, right? And it was Friday night. And I'm like, all right, honey, I have to go watch Oregon, Indiana. But look, she usually falls asleep earlier and I usually stay up late. So I'm like, why don't we watch Stranger Things first? And then I'll put on, the Oregon, Indiana game on the DVR. And I'll watch the game after we're done watching the episode. So we watched the episode of Stranger Things, and then I flip on the game just to see the score, and I'm like, maybe this isn't that important to watch the second half of this one when it was 35-7.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because I watched the game, and then I flipped over to figure skating. It was the United States Championships with the women's finals in figure skating. I absolutely enjoy women's figure skating, which basically determined who the American Olympic team was going to be. So, yeah, I mean, once that game got out of hand, which is very early, I was kind of flipping between. I had a small TV. I had the TV on, the game on all the time. The bigger TV, I was flipping between that and the women's figure skating, which turned out to be a great competition if everyone's interested.
Tony, I got to tell you, you have the most eclectic set of interests on the planet. You have Led Zeppelin, women's figure skating,
Right.
trains. I mean, you're all over the place. I love it.
Open wheel racing, big IndyCar fan. But yeah, no, I mean, listen, I trained for the Olympics for 11 years. Granted, it was in a summer event, the decathlon, but I've always been a big Olympic fan. And how can you not like women's figure skating? I mean, how can you not like women's figure skating? It's women out there, ballet dancers on ice. I think it's great.
Yes, and that'll be coming up in northern Italy, correct?
Yes.
In February, right? Is the end of February is when the Olympics are this year?
It's the actually the Friday after we get back from Shrine Bowl are the opening.
Oh, is it really?
Ceremonies in Milan. So it's kind of interesting. We've got the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, a couple days off. The Olympics for 2 weeks. The Olympics are are over. Out to Indianapolis for the combine. So it's good. I'll have my TV on. I'll be doing all my tape work, all my scouting reports, all the gradings and rankings. So there'll be no reason to basically leave the seat I am presently sitting in.
Sounds like a fun month for Tony Pauline as we head towards this draft process. All right. So why don't we start the game that we just kind of mentioned, Tony, just because we're there. We might as well hit it. The Fernando Mendoza versus Dante Moore epic matchup did not turn out what we thought it was going to turn out. But again, I would love to see Mendoza have to be asked in one of these games to do a lot. And he just hasn't been asked to do a lot. It's not his fault. He's been extremely efficient in what he's been asked to do. He's done nothing but help himself. He's played very good football. But the way this Indiana team is put together and the way they're coached, and you've said it since the beginning of the year, you said you think Kurt Cignetti's the best coach in college football, maybe in all of football, including the pros. And I have trouble disagreeing with you based on what he's done this year, to be totally honest with you. But we just haven't seen Mendoza have to put the team on his back for 4 quarters. You see him do it, for drives late in games. And it was the case again this week. But I mean, I look, scouts are scouts and they're going to make their own decisions. But at this point, if Mendoza's not the first overall pick, I'd be pretty surprised.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he's not Cam Ward from a year ago, where Cam Ward basically carried that Miami offense. He's not done what Jaden Daniels did at LSU. I mean, he wasn't. Caleb Williams was basically a one-man show at USC. But I think Mendoza has that potential. He's being blamed, or people saying, well, he's systematic. Well, great. The system has Indiana at 15-0 right now, playing for a national championship, and he won a Heisman Trophy. He does what's asked of him, which is what he's going to is going to happen at the next level. He's going to be asked to do certain things, and he's a smart guy. But don't, and I agree with everything you say, but people kind of demean him because of that. He's a big, tall passer. He's got an NFL arm. He's athletic. He can make a lot of passes. He makes a lot of passes in big spots. Yes, he hasn't been asked to carry the team, but when they needed a big play against Ohio State, guess what? He was there. He went into Eugene, Oregon, and beat the Ducks in Eugene, which is unheard of. That their backs were against the wall against Penn State, in-state college, a Penn State team that basically had nothing to play for, drove them down the field, made a magnificent pass to Omar Cooper, who made a magnificent catch. So you're right about that. But anytime he's needed to step up, he has. And I think he has that. I think people are saying, well, he's a system. He has that potential, I believe, to carry the team on his shoulders. So what if he hasn't? They're 15-0. They're playing for a national championship. I mean, did you really think did you think they were going to beat Alabama? And if so, did you think they were going to beat Alabama the way they did? I really thought Oregon had a good chance to win the game. Of course, me too, Peach Bowl. Yeah. It wasn't a close contest. Like you said, Kurt Signetti, I've said it for 2 years, best football coach in America. But I think Mendoza, added that extra element where they went from playoff participant in 2024 to playing for a national championship in 2025.
No, Tony, I'm with you. And we'll jump to the Oregon side of this in a second. But his main target continues to be Elijah Surratt. 7 catches, 75 yards, a couple of touchdowns. I had a Giant fan tweet me the other day. What do you think? Like top of the second round for him? I'm like, all right, maybe more like third round, something like that.
I agree with that.
I don't think he's going to test particularly well when you watch him run, but he's got size. He's got some wiggle to him. He runs good routes. He catches the football. He's just not going to kill you on the 40 time.
He's not a quick guy. He's your traditional possession wideout. That's the guy. He's going to win for the contested grab. He's going to be your red zone threat. He's not going to beat opponents downfield in a foot race. But if you want your bigger, stronger, dependable pass catching guy, which the Giants probably need, with Malik Neighbors coming back, who's your more explosive guy with the juice, Elijah Surratt is your guy. Now, that also shows why Mendoza is such a terrific quarterback, because 1 week it's Elijah Surratt. The next week it's Omar Cooper. And it's Charlie Becker filtered in all along the way. And then the tight end Nowakowski, who basically has come out of nowhere. So that's, in my opinion, another reason why Mendoza is so good, because he uses all of his targets and he gets the most out of his receivers. We talk about Surratt. Sometimes we're talking about Cooper. We haven't talked about Charlie Becker because he's not draft eligible, and this is a draft show. But we're going to be talking about Charlie Becker next year. And I think that all points to Mendoza knowing how to use the targets. I would agree with you. I think Surratt's more third round prospect. I don't think he's not going to test as a second rounder, but you never know. I mean, it's not a really strong receiver class, and who's ever in charge, help him make the call with the Giants. They may like him, say, listen, this is the perfect guy to put on the other side from Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, no question about it. Giants, unfortunately, do not own a third round pick as of right now. That was last year in the Jackson Dart trade. So we'll see if the Giants at some point trade down or try to acquire another pick to kind of round out their draft selections this year. All right, let's stick with Indiana. Why don't we finish that group first here, Tony? Let's go to Aiden Fisher, linebacker. Really nice game. Pass breakup, 9 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. And look, this Indiana defense, man, they just keep getting the job done, and they just keep shutting down really good offenses.
I mean, he's a 3-down linebacker, terrific run defender, outstanding in pursuit. You constantly see him 15, 20 yards down the field, making plays when the ball is in the air. Came into the season graded as a late round pick by scouts. He has a middle round grade right now. I don't know if he's going to go in the middle round because, as we've spoken about, you constantly mention, this is such a terrific year for off-ball linebackers, and that's what Aiden Fisher is. He's not a bad pass rusher, but he's a 3-down linebacker a la Avril Reese that when you want him to blitz, he'll do a good job for you. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's probably going to come in under 6'1", just over 230 pounds, but he is a real good hard-nosed football player. Sort of like a Micah McFadden, who also came out of Indiana.
All right, you're right. Why don't we jump over to the Oregon now and just Not a great game for Dante Moore in this
No.
one, Tony. I'm not sure if this is going to impact whatever he ends up doing and when he gets picked and all that stuff, but just not a great game for him. Remember, he still has fewer than 20 college starts, and then the list of quarterbacks that have fewer than 20 quarterback starts in college and what they've done in the pros is not a great list over the last 10 years. But your thoughts on what you saw from Dante Moore and what this means for him moving forward.
I think he is at 20 because he's got started 15 games this year and 5 games at UCLA.
I thought he was at 18. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. He was, but yeah, I may need to be checked on that.
No, you might be right. I
Don't I don't think it's going to affect where he is selected, not that based on this one game. I do think that for those of us who, or for the people who say that Mendoza is more NFL ready than Dante Moore is the type of quarterback where if you select him in the 2026 draft, you may want to sit him, if not for a full season, a half a season, a la Jackson Dart. That's what that game showed me, is that we've seen the guy's talent. You can't throw away all the good tape on him. He had a very bad game, really from the get-go with that pick six, because he's playing against a hyped-up defense that just plays lights out. If anything, it just tells me that Dante Moore's a guy maybe better off on the sidelines the first month or so of the 2026 season rather than being under center.
Yeah, right, Tony. It looked like he had 5 starts at UCLA. You're correct, and then 15 this year. So you're right. He is exactly at 20, which is still not a great number. But yes,
No,
so
it's not. Right.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You're right, but it's more than say a Ty Simpson or somebody like that. So, and I agree with you. You know, go back to what I said a week ago. His agents told me he has to enter the draft, but the decision is going to be up to Dante Moore. So we'll know within the next 24 hours from the taping of this podcast, did that game against Indiana make him say, I want to go back. I don't want to leave school like this. I don't want to leave Oregon like this, because he's going to get a huge NIL deal that's going to be in the 8 figures. So he's got options, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no question about it. And just to remind people, that deadline is Wednesday for players to finalize their draft intentions, except for the players that are playing the national title game. Then that deadline for those players are next week after that game is played, just so people understand. You mentioned his name, Tony, so I'll hit this here very quickly. Ty Simpson, declaring that he intends to enter the NFL draft, but you made a good point to me before we started. Maybe don't put that in pen quite yet.
Well, the rumors are that teams are approaching him, college teams are approaching him with huge NIL deals. One school that has been identified as the Miami Hurricanes, who evidently have offered him a $6.5 million NIL deal. Remember Cam Ward? I mean, we're going to have Eric Galco next week on the show previewing the Shrine Bowl. Cam Ward said he was going to enter the transfer portal. Then he entered the draft, was actually on the Shrine Bowl roster. Then he went back into the transfer portal, signed a big deal with, oh, by the way, Miami, who also signed Carson Beck. So, I think it'd be foolish for Ty Simpson to enter the draft. He's not ready for the NFL. We talk about the 20 starts with Dante Moore. Ty Simpson is a guy who definitely needs more work on the college football field to develop his game. It's going to be too big of a curve for him at the next level. If he enters the draft, I'm sure we're going to see him at the Senior Bowl. And remember, we saw Mac Jones at the Senior Bowl that year, and he was terrific. Jumped into the first round, middle of the first round. Didn't have the career a lot of people thought. Ty Simpson's a bit of a different quarterback. The NIL has changed the face of what these underclassmen can do, whether it be Ty Simpson, whether it be what Dante Moore is thinking. Because of these huge deals, I think in this case, it benefits Ty Moore because he can make a lot of money. A nice college quarterback, Ty Simpson, I'm sorry, make a lot of money, playing college football, and really improve his game and get the bad taste out of a lot of people's mouths that was there due to his play in November and during that first college football playoff game against Indiana.
Okay. Yeah, then Tony, I'm with you. Let's jump to the other game here. This was obviously a very close one. Ole Miss and Miami went down to the wire. Really fun game.
Yeah.
And really, both quarterbacks did a really nice job. I have to do a mea culpa. I took a little shot at Carson Beck in our last podcast. Said, if it gets into his hands in a big spot, I don't think that I trust him. Well, he did a great job in this game. Made some plays at the end, protected the football. Trinidad Chambliss did a pretty nice job too. Let's start with Beck because the Chambliss situation is a little bit more complicated with everything going on off the field as well. What'd you think of Beck's performance? Just, I thought a really nice job out of him.
Exactly what it was. I mean, like you said, he protected the football. Even the one interception really wasn't his fault and drove Miami down for the winning score, scored the winning touchdown himself when he kept the ball when they needed it. I mean, you go to the Texas A&M game when Miami was driving late in the game, they basically took the ball out of Carson Beck's hands and they gave it to Mark Fletcher. He was the guy that drove him down the field, and then the freshman scored the touchdown. They seem a little bit more comfortable getting Carson Beck more involved and letting Carson Beck, do different things and basically putting the ball in his hands, as you mentioned. You got to give him credit. Is this going to swing the needle as far as him jumping into the top 60? As far as I'm concerned, no. Maybe some team will see him that way, but, he's played well. He deserves a lot of credit. He deserves credit going back to college for another year after that poor season at Georgia. But there's also a lot of bad film out there. There's also, what was it, 4 interceptions against Louisville. There's the issues last year at Georgia, which teams are going to have to decide on. Teams are going to have to get over. You can't just have a guy just leap up draft boards because of one good performance, despite the fact Carson Beck deserves a lot of applause for it.
No, I'm with you, Tony. And look, I still think they'll probably. I'm not sure he's going to sneak into day 2. I think you're probably looking at an early day 3 pick.
I agree.
Is kind of, I think, what the situation is there. But look, good job by him. And I think, if he figures out a way to win a national championship, good for Carson Beck. That'll be a fun game next week, and we'll get to that game in just a second. But the Trinidad Chambliss situation is interesting, Tony, because he played well in this game. He kind of, like, the way he throws it kind of reminds me a little bit of J.J. McCarthy. Everything's a line drive. He doesn't have a lot of, like, touch passes to me down the field. He tries to kind of fire everything. But that aside, this is a player that we've been monitoring throughout the year. Maybe has helped himself more than any other player in college football this year in terms of elevating his draft stock.
Yep.
Wants to go back to school another year. The NCAA ruled against him. He's appealing, following a lawsuit, is my understanding. I don't know how quickly that moves as to whether or not he's going to be able to go in. Breakdown for everybody. What you saw from Chambliss on the field, but then more importantly, everything going on off the field that will determine whether or not he's in the 2026 draft class.
The difference between Carson Beck and Trinidad Chambliss, in my opinion, is Trinidad Chambliss has that it factor. When Carson Beck drops back for a pass in an important game, in an important moment of his games, you're like, you're wondering what's going to happen. You're wondering what the end result is going to be. With Trinidad Chambliss, you feel like he's going to be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat. He did it against Georgia, getting him down the field in position to kick the winning field goal. I really thought when they got the ball back with 25 seconds that Trinidad Chambliss was somehow going to drive his team down the field into the end zone for a touchdown, and he almost did it. I mean, he almost did it. You probably could have said that it should have been pass interference. To me, that is the difference. Trinidad Chambliss has that it factor. You just get the feeling watching this guy, whenever the ball is in his hands, something good is going to happen because he's done it week after week after week. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but then again, Ty Simpson's not the biggest guy in the world. He's a little bit shorter, but he's a stockier guy. I would agree with you. He's got to learn to put a little more touch on throws, but he can make all the throws. He's athletic in and out of the pocket, doesn't make bad decisions. As far as off the field, it's very interesting. I'm all for all the players with all these NIL deals. I am not in favor of going to court to try and extend your college career because your eligibility's over, because then you have different rules for different people. And you are right about how long this can take. I mean, what happens if this proceeding drags out until March and April, and then the courts rule, sorry, your eligibility's done? Is he in the April draft? Or do they have a supplemental draft for him in July or a special draft for Trinidad Chambliss? It's going to be interesting to watch. I give him a lot of credit because he wants to go back to school. I'm not a big fan of the NCAA, but I think the rules are the rules. It's in state court right now in Mississippi, so you've got to think the state of Mississippi is going to rule in favor of Trinidad Chambliss. And then let's see if the NCAA appeals it. Or what, we talked about this earlier in the year with West Virginia, letting players have extra years of eligibility. Diego Pavia, won his case in August, which gave him an extra year of eligibility. It'll be interesting to see how long this drags out. And if it's ruled against him that he can't play, what happens then? Is he in the April draft, or are they going to have a special supplemental draft for him?
Yeah, and look, if he gets into the supplemental draft here, Tony, that could be interesting for a quarterback. If I don't want to relive nightmares for Giant fans, but go back to Dave Brown, who was a supplemental selection for the New York Giants in the early '90s with a high pick. Teams get into June, right? That's when the supplemental draft is, right? It's mid June, and they sit there like, boy. We're in camp here. We really like our quarterback options. Team can sometimes get a little desperate, and
Well,
they might decide to well, use a second round pick on him or something like that.
or you can use a first round pick because you're saying, listen, if I can get the player in that I was going to take in the first round of 2027 now and have a whole year of NFL experience, why not go for it? And I think that would be the case with Trinidad Chambliss. I think Chambliss would go earlier in a supplemental draft, which is usually the first. I gave you a lie in the past. He'll go earlier in a supplemental draft this July than he would if he enters April's draft.
No, totally. I'm with you. I think that will happen. All right. Other parts of this game that were interesting. Good job by Ole Miss. Pardon me. For the most part, I thought they did a pretty good job controlling that Miami pass rush, which really blew up that week's prior game.
Yeah, absolutely. But we talk about Diego Pounds, the left tackle from Mississippi. We're going to see him at the Shrine Bowl. A lot of people forget Diego Pounds was the blindside protector for Drake May during Drake May's junior year at North Carolina, and he did a good job. I like him more as a right tackle, but both of those tackles did a terrific job, and I think gave NFL scouts reason for pause to kind of reconsider him. Again, with Pounds, we're going to see him at the Shrine Bowl.
All right, now let's go over to Miami, Tony. Wide receiver, Keelan Murray in a big game. 7 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown.
Athletic guy, has a lot of ability. Scouts were waiting for him to break out, and obviously he broke out in that game. Granted, the Mississippi defense is not the strongest, but he showed the ability to break big plays. He's very good in the intermediate routes, very good on the sidelines. He's an athletic guy with decent hands who just has to pull it together. I think he's probably going to go somewhere mid-day 3 because of his upside. But then again, it's a weak receiver draft, so he may go earlier because somebody will just take a liking to the fact that he's 6 foot and change, 200 pounds, and he's probably going to run in the 4.4s, and he plays to that athleticism on the field.
All right, and then now let's jump to the other player that did really well. Mohamed Toure, Miami linebacker Tony, 4 tackles and a sack.
Rutgers transfer. Rutgers Scarlet Knight fans remember when he was at Rutgers, transferred to Miami. Has had a lot of injury issues in the past, but he's an explosive player. Again, we talk about Arvell Reese, we talk about Aiden Fisher. Toure is a terrific pass rushing linebacker that can also play in space. He's good in coverage. He's terrific in pursuit. From a football point of view, you're looking at a 3rd, 4th round pick, but then you throw in those medicals. My information is he's going to try and get another year of college eligibility because of the injuries. I don't see how that's going to happen. If he enters the draft and he passes combine medicals or medicals before the draft, you're probably looking at a late round pick. At the very least, with Toure, you're looking at a backup linebacker, situational pass rusher, special teams player.
I'm assuming he's brother to Mohamed Toure, who was at Rutgers as well. I mean,
he is Mohamed Toure.
I'm sorry. Did he have a brother that went to Rutgers, Toure, the wide receiver, or am I remembering that wrong?
He may be. I don't know that off the top of my head.
All right, I'll have to double check that. I thought I had that in the back of my head, but my brain's scrambled from having 2 small children. All right, let's go to the college football playoffs finals here, Tony. Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, and we'll go through some of the invitations that have gone out for the Senior Bowl in a second. It'll be a real fun matchup going against those 2 offensive tackles for Indiana.
And you think the Miami guys have an incredible advantage. I mean, Ruben Bain should basically eat up Carter Smith, the left tackle for Indiana, or Khalil Benson, the right tackle for Indiana, but it's yet to happen because both of those guys have been playing lights out, the Indiana offensive tackles. Akeem Mesidor, people don't talk to him about him as much because they're concentrating on Ruben Bain. On paper, it's advantage Miami Hurricanes and a big advantage. But as we've seen in the past, really throughout the season, even against Penn State, I mean, these Indiana offensive tackles and the Indiana offensive line find a way to get it done.
And I'm sorry, Samori Toure, by the way, is currently a wide receiver for the Saints, but he went to Montana and Nebraska. So I knew there was a Torrey wide receiver. For some reason, I thought he would.
Remember recruiting Torrey out of the big tall guy out of Montana. I don't think he went. He was a really good receiver. From what I remember, he went undrafted.
Yes, but he's still playing with the Saints. Good for him. He's been in the league a few years now. But I knew there was a Torrey wide receiver. For some reason, I thought he went to Rutgers. I think I confused him with the Melton brothers, who also played wide receiver and corner at Rutgers. That's where I think I had the little mental flop there. Anyway, then you have the combination of Mendoza, Surratt, Cooper, and another opportunity for Keontae Scott, who's been just great around the line of scrimmage as a slot guy this year, Tony. Another challenge for him.
He's tough. He's physical. I think the advantage he has here is Keontae Scott. When the way Miami uses him, he's almost like a nickel safety. He's always facing the action. I will be interested to see if he's put in man coverage, if he's placed over any of the Indiana receivers, all of whom can beat you at any time with Mendoza. Because if he is, that's another opportunity for Keontae Scott to show another skill in man coverage. And of course, with Fernando Mendoza, we talked about early on about how he's never really been challenged. I think he's going to be challenged with this Miami pass rush. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts.
No question about it. And then finally, D'Angelo Pons, who, man, he is just, he's helped his stock as much as he can, given his size constraints and the type of player he is. But, man, he's played great. You mentioned Keelan Murray in the big game, in the semifinal game, and then C.J. Daniels as well. That'll be fun watching that matchup.
I was talking to a buddy in the scouting industry. We're talking about D'Angelo Pons. I said, if he's 3 inches taller, he's a first-round pick. He goes, you know what? Superb dynamite nickel cornerbacks are worth a first-round pick. So we create D'Angelo Pons as a third-round pick. If he enters the draft, you're probably looking at early second round because he is such an exceptional ball skills. It's kind of frickin' frack with Marion and Daniels. Marion's more your downfield speed guy. C.J. Daniels is more your underneath, strong possession wideout. Both will be good challenges for Pons.
No, Tony, I'm with you. And I think, those guys will certainly be a challenge. And look what Upton Stout did for the 49ers, right? I mean, like, he's been playing great. Him and Pons, I don't know if they're identical physically, but they're not far off from each other. They're very similar. So just look at the impact he's had. If you can get a really good player at that spot, picking him in the back end of the first round is not necessarily the wrong thing to do. So just something to keep in mind as you could start to scout some of these players and you decide where they might slot in when you get to the 2026 NFL Draft. Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's go to picks 13 to 24 of our mock draft. Each one of us are doing it separately here, so we'll kind of go back and forth. My guess is that the next 12 picks will have some variance in these selections. We'll see. Our first 12 are also different, but the same 12 players, which I thought was interesting. So I'll give my 12 first, then I'll give my pick at 13, then I'll give Tony's 12, who'll give his pick at 13. Then we'll go back and forth. So my top 12 was the Raiders, Fernando Mendoza, Jets, Dante Moore. And I'm starting to think maybe the Jets aren't going to pick a quarterback, but we'll see. Arizona Cardinals, Arvell Reese. Tennessee Titans, Keldrick Falk. New York Giants, Carnell Tate. Cleveland Browns, Spencer Fatto. Washington Commanders, Ruben Bain. New Orleans Saints, Caleb Downs. Kansas City Chiefs, Jeremiah Love. Cincinnati Bengals at 10, David Bailey. Miami Dolphins at 11, Francis Mauigoa. And Dallas Cowboys at 12, Sonny Styles. So by pick at number 13, that's the LA Rams via the Atlanta Falcons, who are currently searching for their next head coach. Based on reports, they're in competition with the Giants for John Harbaugh, among others. I'm going to give a Mansour Delane here, Tony, the cornerback out of LSU. We talked about at the end of the last show, both of us kind of debated Sonny Styles or Delane for the Cowboys. And as I looked at the rest of the class, maybe I should have given him Delane because I think there's a better chance of them finding a good off-ball linebacker later in this draft than a good corner. So I'm not sure if they're going to put that into their equation here. But I decided to give him Mansour Delane here. You look at the Rams. Look, they beat the Panthers over the weekend, Tony. Bryce Young kind of carved them up a little bit. They complete a lot of passes down the field. If you look at the players that are out there at cornerback, they're not highly drafted guys. They need help in the back end. So I give them Mansour Delane out of LSU.
Same here. I mean, I will tell you, going back to giving the Cowboys Mansour Delane, I think Sonny Styles is a much higher rated player on the board overall. Delane is the best of a mediocre group of cornerbacks. You've got to take the best player available. I would stick by that pick, but I would agree with you. I mean, Delane is going to fall in that mid-first round pick, mid-first round area as far as his prospect rating, his overall rating. and the Rams desperately need a cornerback. They've got 2 first-round picks. With their first selection, they take Delane, the top cornerback in this year's draft.
And Tony, just so people know, Raiders, Fernando Mendoza, Jets, Dante Moore, Arizona Cardinals, Jeremiah Love, Titans, Ruben Bain, Giants, Arvell Reese, Spencer Fano to the Browns like me, David Bailey to the Commanders, Keldrick Falk to the Saints at 8, Cardinal Tate to the Chiefs at 9, Caleb Downs to the Bengals at 10, Francis Mauigoa to the Dolphins at 11. He also had Sonny Styles to the Cowboys at 12.
All right, Tony, hang on. I got to ask you something. You kind of said something. You left a loaded question there. Can't let you by. You said, I'm starting to think the Jets won't draft the quarterback at 2. You got to go into detail on that one.
Here, Tony, here's the thing. I don't know if Dante Moore traditionally would be that highly rated of a player, for one. Like, I don't think he's going to be the highest grade on their board, for one, right? I think that's the first part of the conversation. And, they have a really good offensive line, which I think kind of green lights a quarterback a little bit. Right. Which I think if they do pick a quarterback, that's what'll do it. Right. The question is the rest of the stuff that's around the quarterback on offense good enough to insert the quarterback into the equation? And, Garrett Wilson's there. We'll see if Breece Hall is back. I think that's probably unlikely based on everything we've heard. But, I just don't know if they think they're ready for that quarterback yet. And they have so much draft equity in next year's draft, even more so than this year's draft. Like, do you consider the fact that, all right, well, I can move around next year and do what I got to do? I guess it all comes down to what you think of Dante Moore. If you think he's a special prospect and it's not going to be easy to find somebody with the same grade as him, you pick him. But if you really see him as like a guy that's maybe the 19th best player in a normal draft class, is it worth picking him at 2, knowing that I'm going to have all this draft equity in next year's class?
I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why. I agree with you about the offensive line. Jets have a good young offensive line. They got 2 good young offensive tackles. They also have a terrific young tight end, and Mason Taylor, who they selected in the second round, who's developing. You talked about Garrett Wilson going to come back next year. Garrett Wilson comes back next year. You hope that Adonai Mitchell can take the next step and really build upon the flashes that he showed this year. And if he's not your number 2 receiver, maybe he's your number 3 receiver, and you get another receiver out of the draft. Breece Hall, we'll see what happens. I tend to agree with you. I know from reporting the organization was down on him in the beginning of the season. The reason they didn't trade him in the middle of the season at the trade deadline is, well, we're going to get a compensatory pick for him. I think they'd be foolish to let him go. He may not want to come back. So maybe they franchise him. Maybe they tag and trade him. I think there's a danger, as we've talked about on the show, saying we'll get our quarterback next year. I mean, you looked at this year, people were talking about Lenore, Sellers, Arch Manning, all these quarterbacks at the top of the draft. It didn't pan out. No one was talking about Dante Morphine. You look last year, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe. It's going to be, didn't pan out. So, yeah, on paper, it looks good for 2027. But are you going to really be willing to roll the dice and, hope that you get your quarterback in 2027, considering, the variables, and it doesn't work out? Plus, I think the fact that the Jets own the second pick and they don't have to trade any in a quarterback, and they can keep all that draft capital. I like Dante Moore a lot. Go back to what we said in reviewing the Chick-fil-A Bowl. It's a situation with Dante Moore. You may have to sit him for a little while, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Giants hit Pater with that with Jackson Dart. Patrick Mahomes sat for an entire year. I know football's a here and now game, but there's nothing wrong with taking a guy, letting him sit as your offensive line continues to develop. As Garrett Wilson gets back on the field, you see what you got with Adonai Mitchell. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I think, especially coming off the year that they had with the urgency, I would be surprised if the Jets pass on a quarterback or 2.
We'll see. Again, I think it comes down to what you ultimately think of Moore.
Absolutely.
You don't have your draft grade done on him yet, neither do I. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up landing when we get there. All right, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens at 14, Tony. Who do you have them picking?
They need an edge. TJ Parker sitting there. Granted, we have to wait and see who is coaching the Baltimore Ravens this upcoming season. But still, the system that they've used for all these years, I think TJ Parker is a perfect fit. He's an explosive edge rusher. You can do a lot of different things with him. The production was not there this year, but if you watch the film, it wasn't due to lack of effort. He wasn't mailing it in. He's just a fast guy off the edge. He's got to get a little bit stronger. Not great against the run, but he gives effort. I think it's a perfect fit for the perfect player for the perfect system.
Yeah, I thought about TJ Parker here, and his pass rush is one of the top things for the Ravens. I also thought about Peter Woods, but with Justin Madubuike coming back, I didn't really think that was necessarily a need and a fit. And they have the big kid out of UConn from a few years ago as other defensive tackle, who's a really, really good player. They still need weapons, Tony. Like outside of Zay Flowers, who I think is a good wide receiver, not a great wide receiver. I think they need people for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball to. And I think their next coach, the big, you know, mission that he's going to be given is to maximize Lamar Jackson. So I went Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, at Arizona State here. I think, maybe I would like a little bit more of a different body type to complement Flowers, but I think he's the next best wide receiver out there. So I went Jordan Tyson.
If it's Clint Kubiak, the head coach, it could very well be the selection.
Could be. All right, Bucks at number 15, Tony. I went Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. Put him right next to Vita Vea, who at some point is going to start to slow down here. I think they need more help on the defensive line. I could not find an edge player here that I thought was worth the pick, so I went with the defensive tackle, Peter Woods.
A lot of people are going to disagree with my pick. I went with Anthony Hill, but the fact is this: he's an explosive one-gap linebacker. That's what Todd Bowles likes. That's the Todd Bowles system. They've had a lot of success with that type of linebacker in the past. Yes, I know it's a great year for off-ball linebackers. You may be able to get a player of that ilk in day two, but you look at Hill, he plays with like his hair is on fire. It's nonstop go. I think it's a perfect fit for that system. And they also really need a linebacker desperately.
All right, Tony, let's go now to the New York Jets at number 16. Who do you have them selecting?
I have them. Peter Woods is still available on my board. The Jets need a lot of help on defense. They made those trades in the offseason. They need help with defensive tackle. They've got some solid veterans there. But I went with Peter Woods because he's athletic. He's explosive. I don't say he's a one-gap defensive tackle, but he plays like a one-gap defensive tackle. He does a lot of different things well. Still needs some development on his game, but his upside is huge. And, trading Quentin Williams, he's not Quentin Williams, but he's that type of player. Could develop into that type of player. Fills a hole that the Jets basically created by trading away Quentin Williams.
I went same position, different player, Tony. I went Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. And again, he's more of a nose tackle, I think, than Quentin Williams was, in fairness. But look, I think when you're building it, and look, the Jets are basically building their defense from scratch here, Tony. I'm not going to say they have nothing on that side of the ball, but they don't have much. It is a very talent-bereft unit. And I think getting a guy that you can put there in the middle to just stop the run and you could feel good about it, I think is pretty valuable. So I went Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Let's go to the Lions here at 17, Tony. I struggled at this one. I went back and forth on a couple different players. I think they could use an offensive lineman to kind of help as that group is slowly, I'm not going to say falling apart. I think that's a little bit strong, but obviously they had Ragnar retire last year. I'm not sure how much longer Taylor Decker is going to play. So a lot of questions to answer there. I think they can also use help in the defensive backfield at corner specifically, but I could not find a corner that I liked as high as 17 here. So I did not feel great about that. So I think this is probably a little bit high, but I gave him because I think Dan Campbell will see him and say, I want that guy on my football team. I gave him Caden Proctor, the offensive lineman out of Alabama. And again, try him at tackle. See if it works. And if it doesn't, you can move him into guard. You can put Ratledge back at center, who I know they tried to put Ratledge at center last year. It didn't work. Maybe now in year two, when he's more comfortable, he can do it. So, again, I did not love this. And as we joked before we started, I did not love any of my picks after, like, this area. And I felt like I was kind of reaching and grabbing for people. But I gave him Caden Proctor, the offensive lineman out of Alabama.
And I had the Detroit Lions selecting Caden Proctor. Yeah. We did, yes. And my thought was we'll have to wait and see with Taylor Decker. He may retire. Remember, Penei Sewell was a terrific left tackle at Oregon, so we know that Penei Sewell can play left tackle. I'm pretty staunch in that I believe Proctor is a right tackle in the NFL, so I think you can move Sewell over to the left side, absolutely, and then have Proctor play right tackle. I agree with you. This is one of the tougher picks. I thought cornerback, they don't need a receiver. Really no defensive lineman there. I like McDonald, but I went with Caden. I went with Proctor because I think depending on what Taylor Decker does, that will offer him some versatility.
All right, how about Vikings at AT, Tony? Where'd you go?
I mean, you talk about how the Baltimore Ravens are always looking for weapons, always looking for receivers. It seems that the Minnesota Vikings always need a cornerback. So I went with Evian Terrell. The cornerback is a need, is their number one need. It's always their number one need. They could use a safety. Once Caleb Downs is off the board, the safety position falls off a cliff. They could use a linebacker, maybe CJ Allen. I think he's going to go earlier than most people think. But I went with a cornerback because Minnesota's got to fill that hole.
Yeah, no question about it. And look, Eric Wilson, who's had a great year for them at linebacker, is a free agent, Tony. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. Blake Cashman has one more year left on his deal. But I went linebacker and I gave him CJ Allen. And that's what I decided to do here. I thought they could use some help on defense. And again, Terrell's a good pick. And I think another corner we'll see go in the first round too. But I just think I don't love this corner group. And I think it's a little high for those guys. So I decided to give him CJ Allen out of Georgia for the reasons that you described. Carolina Panthers picking 19. Look, they just don't have enough guys with juice on offense. They had a couple wide receivers. Obviously T-Mac, Tedero McMillan had a really good year. Coker has come back and had a really good year in year number 2. But I think they could use a little bit of help. And I know they have a couple of players at tight end that are good, but I think they could use somebody that's a little bit more athletic and a little bit more of a game changer. I know Jatavian Sanders is there, but he got hurt. So I gave him Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon, as someone that can, make some plays, a little bit more of an athlete, can be more of a playmaker for you on offense to try to give Bryce Young a little bit more help.
Yeah, I wanted to stay more on the defensive side of the ball. They need an edge. They need a linebacker, who can do both. I gave him Cassius Howell of Texas A&M because he is an explosive edge rusher.
They need edge rushers, man. You're right about that.
And he can also play off the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that can make plays in reverse or laterally as well as up the field. So when I looked at everything, I think they're going to stay defense, and that's why I gave him Howell.
All right, Dallas Cowboys at 20, Tony. What do you got?
Hadn't taken Sonny Styles with the second pick over Mansour Delane. I went with Jermod McCoy, the cornerback from Tennessee. Didn't play a snap this year because he was injured. Now, I know, they took Shannon Ravel last year, who was injured into in October of his senior season, going back with another injured cornerback, but McCoy's got a lot of ability. And I think it's a situation where if you want a cornerback, you better take him early because it really falls off a cliff. It's going to be interesting watching McCoy moving forward towards the combine. Does he work out at the combine? What's the medical situation leaking out after those combine interviews? He's a terrific cornerback at the top of his game, and it's a position of need for the Cowboys.
Yeah, remember this happened, the injury, last January. So he's going to be basically a year and a half off of it once you get to training camp, give or take. So it's a little bit of a different situation than Ravel, right? Because he was hurt in October. So you're looking at like an 8 or 9 month difference in terms of recovery. So to me, this is a very Cowboys pick. And I had McCoy going to Dallas too, Tony. So me and you were on the same exact page. It just seemed this is something the Cowboys have always done, right? Look at Jalen Smith taken out of Notre Dame with the second round pick coming off that horrific knee injury he suffered. So this is just something that the Cowboys tend to do. They'll roll the dice on injuries. I think they have a lot of faith in the training staff and the doctors to make decisions on these types of players. So I'm with you. I gave him McCoy. It was a pick that I think does have some risk. You could put Bland back in the slot if you want, with Ravel and McCoy playing outside. So that's kind of the way I looked at it, and that's what I decided to do with the Cowboys as well, which I thought was interesting. I mean, you had the same pick there. All right, let's go now. And by the way, this could also be a big trade down situation for the Cowboys. They do not have a second-round pick, Tony. They do for the Quentin Williams trade. They do not have a third-round pick from the George Pickens trade. So I could very much see them trying to move down here, whether it's 10 spots or 15 spots or 8 spots, pick up a second or third-round pick to try to give them a little bit more draft capital to work with this year. All right, pick number 21, Tony. Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw what their offense looked like when DK Metcalf got suspended for 2 games, and their pass game was virtually invisible. They were ineffective. They couldn't do much. So I gave Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of USC, a bit of a playmaker. I think his body type and skill set works well with DK Metcalf. I think they're very different. I think they work well as a team. So I gave him Mekhi Lemon out of USC.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as the position is concerned. I gave him Jordan Tyson, who's still on my board.
Oh, he's still right. He's still available for you. That's right.
I was thinking Chris Brazel, but he's a lot like DK Metcalf. With Tyson, you're getting a more explosive route runner, more explosive underneath receiver, guy who's got great hands, just incredible hands, great focus as well as concentration. Brings something different to a team that is desperate for receivers. Now we'll have to wait and see what happens at the quarterback position. But you could tell from week one. They got the Calvin Austin kid from Memphis, who's a nice gadget player. He's been their number 2 receiver. They've used some draft picks at the receiver position.
Roman Wilson just has not worked out for them, Tony, which is a shame. I thought he was going to be a good player coming out, but he can't even get on the field.
Has been injured. I'm told that he's struggled basically grasping onto the offensive system. We'll see what happens moving forward. When they traded away George Pickens, I think Tyson is really upgrades that receiver unit once they select him.
All right, let's go to Chargers at 22.
I have him taking Caden McDonald, who's off your board. Another big interior defensive lineman, is a good fit for that system. He's more than a gap occupier. He's a playmaker. He's an explosive, athletic guy. I think he's a little bit better than Tyleek Williams, who was selected late in the first round last year. He's got more upside. Really, it came out of nowhere because that front four for Ohio State was so terrific in 2024. You had him going to the Jets. I have him going to the Chargers at 22.
And look, if you watch, I know a lot of that had to do with injuries, but if you watch the Chargers game against the Patriots, Justin Herbert did not play great, but he also was running for his life for much of that game. It wasn't the worst offensive line performance I've ever seen, but it certainly wasn't good. And I know they've done a lot to address that, whether it's Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt or Mekhi Becton in the offseason. But you got to keep building that line, Tony. So I gave him, and this is our pronunciation of the day. I'm going to try to start doing these every week for you. It is Ioane Vega. Vega Ioane out of Penn State, the guard. So I'm giving him to the Chargers. It does not look like that at all, the name, the way you spell it. But Vega Ioane out of Penn State, I gave him to the Chargers here to try to solidify that offensive line, which has been a struggle.
A very Jim Harbaugh type pick, because that's the way he built those championship teams at Michigan with big punch in the face offensive linemen. That's what Ioane is. I am up now with the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm up now back to back. I go again with the Eagles here. So I'm going to go. They always like to build up their lines, Tony. I don't think their strategy changes here, to be honest with you. And they kind of very quietly have gotten a little bit shallow at their defensive end position. They don't have a lot of depth there, Tony. So I want to see them build that up a little bit more. He's off the board for you, not for me. So TJ Parker, defensive end out of Clemson, going to the Eagles at number 23 for me to try to get a guy with a little bit more size at defensive end. They've some smaller guys out there. I want to get a little more bulk, so I give him TJ Parker.
That'd be very much a Howie Roseman pick. I mean, he's great at getting those guys who kind of slip through the cracks. I also went with defensive end, and I went with a guy with a little bit bigger size. Now, he has not officially entered the draft yet. We'll see what happens, and I know this is going to be a little bit earlier than what people have him, but I haven't taken Kenyatta Jackson of Ohio State, a guy who I think is a terrific fit in a four-man line. He's very athletic. He's got a great amount of upside, really showed the ability to take over games this season, position of high priority. I think he's being a bit underrated, but I have the Eagles. I would have liked Jermod McCoy if he was available. Maybe one of the other cornerbacks. I considered Colton Hood there. But when everything was on the table, I said Kenyatta Jackson.
All right. Now, Tony, you're up. The last pick of this second half of our mock here, the Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns from the Jacksonville Jaguars had them taking an offensive lineman, the offensive tackle with their first selection. Cleveland's got to go offense. We don't know who's going to be their quarterback in 2026. Maybe it's Deshaun Watson. Who knows? I had them taking Chris Brazel. They need receivers. He's a bigger guy, Ohio State guy. So he played in the state before. He's going to test incredibly well. He's going to run really fast, and he plays fast on the football field. He's a big play receiver who's also a game controlling receiver. He's not there yet, but I think he's got great upside. You see those highlight reel films. He consistently comes away with a lot of difficult receptions. So I went with Brazel here. Basically take the pressure off of Howard Fannin, the rookie tight end who had an outstanding season. Get some guys out on the edges there and catch the football.
Yeah, I think he matches well with Jerry Jeudy's skill set too, right? Who they invested in a wide receiver from Tulane in Tennessee, an SEC guy. So that's the pick there for Tony, for the Browns. And I'll be honest with you, Tony, I had Denzel Boston in here for the Browns in wide receiver. Again, I thought bigger guy down the field. He kind of matches well with Jerry Jeudy. I think those guys can kind of play well together. I like to put a basketball team together, a wide receiver, want guys at different sizes and shapes and skill sets and stuff like that. But once Ty Simpson said he was going to declare for the draft, I just could not resist. I think this is a little higher than where his eventual grade is going to be honest with you. But it's the Browns. They always need a quarterback. They got a lot of draft capital. They don't have to move. They can just use the 24th pick. I don't think any of the guys left we're talking about are true first-round players. These are all guys with probably, borderline, second-round type of grades. End of first, start of second round at best. So I gave him Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama, as the Browns continue to run their merry-go-round at the quarterback position. I don't think Shedeur Sanders showed near enough at the end of the year for them to trust him. You're right, Deshaun Watson still is under contract. They're going to have a new coach this year, the Browns. Maybe they just do a sacrificial lamb year with Deshaun Watson at quarterback before you can get rid of him with that contract. But, man, not a great position to be in at the quarterback position for your Browns, but Ty Simpson's sitting there. Why not?
Let me ask you, so you still have Chris Brazzell's available on your board, correct?
I do, yes.
I mean, it makes sense based on history. I mean, Chris Wenke, Johnny Manziel, Ty Simpson. I mean, throw them all together in the blender. So, and it is a position of need. And you never know. I mean, if he eventually is in the draft, Ty Simpson could be good value at the 24th selection.
Sorry, Tony, I am officially scarred by wide receivers coming out of that Tennessee system with Jalen Hyatt to the Giants. But look, I mean, I like Brazzell. I think he actually has some wiggle to him. They put him in that isolated X receiver role in Tennessee, which I think has more real stuff to it than maybe some of the other spots that the way they run it. But, I think him and Boston will kind of be in that same range at the end of the first round if you're looking for a big wide receiver. In fact, I'll be interested to see which one of those guys goes first. I think they'll be in that same area.
Well, a little inside information. Just remember where you're here. I'm told Brazzell is going to test off the charts. He's going to run that. He's going to run a lot. I think he'll run a lot faster than Boston. I think he's going to run faster than anybody expects him to. Like I said, I'm going to be interested to watch the 10 split because when you watch the film, he's not really super quick off the.
I agree with that.
Off the line, as you said, he's a long strider, more built up speed. But I think he's going to test off the charts, and some teams are going to fall in love with the size, the pass catching skill we saw last year at Tennessee, as well as Tulane early in his career. And the testing numbers.
Yeah, Brazzell to me more of a explosive deep threat down receiver. Boston, I think he has some of that, but I think he's more of a possession-y type of guy. He runs a lot of those in-breaking routes in middle of the field, catches the ball well. I think more of a better receiver technique-wise and just the art of playing wide receiver further along than Brazzell's. But you're right, they might end up just falling in love with the testing. I think that's very possible. Moody's is a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, I'm going to bring up the Senior Bowl Twitter account here, but they've done a really good job of kind of talking about the guys. And these episodes have gone long the last couple of weeks, folks. I apologize, but there's been a lot of news here in the world of the draft and college football and stuff like that as we see who's coming out in the draft. And we've had some, pretty good invitations, Tony, get accepted here when it comes to the Senior Bowl. And the one we had most recently is Akeem Mesidor from Miami, committing to the Senior Bowl. And it came late, despite the fact he's going to be in the finals. He has some medical stuff with his feet from early in his career, an older prospect. But you could argue, just as a player, he might be a better player than Ruben Bain is right now. Now, there's a lot of other factors with that, but it'll be fun to see him in Mobile.
I think he's probably more complete. If he's in Mobile, hopefully we'll see him there. Goes through on the invitation. Want to see how he stands up against the run. Want to see those one-on-ones, not just the pass rush moves, because he's a terrific edge rusher. But is he able to hold up against the bigger offensive tackles on running down situations?
All right, I'm going to run through some guys here, Tony. Just jump in and interrupt me if you want to talk about any of these guys specifically. Logan Taylor, offensive lineman from Boston College, commits. Will Kacmarek from Ohio State, the tight end, will be going to the Senior Bowl. I mentioned Akeem Mesidor from Miami. Dan Villari from Syracuse will be going to the Senior Bowl. He's a tight end. A guy that we talked about, I definitely want to get your take on him. Jacob Rodriguez, the Texas Tech linebacker, will be going to the Senior Bowl. I know we talked about him before that Texas Tech playoff game. He's a fun player.
Smaller guy, but he's a complete player. I mean, he plays lights out. He also plays smart football. Was a guy that just caused turnover after turnover. He basically mastered the art of the punch fumble, getting the ball, dislodging the ball from opponents. Uh, Goes sideline to sideline. The only question with him is he's not a real big guy and he's not going to test very well, but he's a terrific football player. Want to go back to Logan Taylor, the offensive lineman from Boston College. Jude Browery, the left tackle, is playing there. Logan Taylor's more of your power gap lineman. He is your nasty guy. When I talk about Akeem Mesidor going up against the run blockers, Logan Taylor is that run blocker. He is the guy that opened up the running lanes for what was a very difficult Boston College offense this year. A fun guy to watch if you like those power blocking, mauling type of linemen.
Yeah, and I was, his former teammate Ozzie Trapillo had a patella injury this week, which is tough to see. He was having a nice year too. He had to leave that game with an injury. Speaking of offensive linemen, told me something we've mentioned on the show. He plays opposite your favorite guy, Isaiah World. Emmanuel Pregno, the offensive tackle from Oregon, also heads to the Senior Bowl. It was fun to see him against his edge rusher group.
Another guy like Logan Taylor. I mean, he is a tough, powerful, punching him out type of power blocker, but he also moves relatively well. Was good at USC, was terrific this year at Oregon, fundamentally sound. Again, you want to see what I'll be looking for is those one-on-ones, how he handles those quick, explosive interior defensive linemen.
Whenever I see an Iowa offensive lineman going to the Senior Bowl, it raises my eyebrows because Iowa just develops really good offensive linemen. Your thoughts on Jennings Dunker, who I think we talked about very early in the year, but we really haven't talked much about since.
Is actually a guy that's been on my radar for the past 3 years. Plays right tackle, more of a smaller area guy. Be interesting to see if teams project him to tackle for a guard. But again, your power, and I think that's the theme of the tackle class this year, right? There's no outstanding pure left pass blocking left tackles, weak side tackles. It's more your bigger, stronger power gap offensive tackles. That's what Jennings Dunker is. Shows some ability on the second level, but you really like him better in a smaller area.
No question about it, Tony. Jalen Farmer out of Kentucky, the offensive lineman heading to the Senior Bowl. Parker Brailsford from Alabama, another offensive lineman heading to the Senior Bowl. A couple special teams guys as well.
It was, but they also didn't they invite the Dartmouth kid? It was a surprise invite. I had gotten, and I forget the kid's name. I wanted to ask Drew about it when we had him on the show, but I said, you know what, I better shut my mouth because it's some inside information. And they ended up inviting him like a week and a half ago. A big, strong offensive tackle. Again, a guy who I think is going to project inside to guard. Massive opportunity for him. I don't know that he's got the athleticism to basically compete with the other people. He can prove me wrong, but it was an interesting selection because he wasn't even on the scouting radar prior to the season.
And Tony, I'll just leave it at this. This is a personal request from me. If Drew Fabianic is out there, listening to this, can we get a invitation out to Ole Miss kicker Lucas Carnero, please? He is an unbelievable kicker. And as for the Giants, who have had some issues in that area the last couple of years, I would have no problem using a day 3 pick on a guy like that. The way he can kick it from oh, really? So you think he might sneak into round 3?
Well, I mean, just watch him, man.
He's a monster. I know. I love him.
And he's so cool. I mean, he's just, I'm just looking up here. He's a junior. I don't know. He's entering the draft. He's listed as a redshirt junior. So,
yeah, but he might have graduated by now if he's a redshirt junior, right? So there's a chance of that.
He's got the leg. I mean, he's cool. So you think he'd be able to handle New York. And by the way, the Dartmouth offensive lineman that I was referring to, Delby Lameau. So he's properly named for that area with that sort of like French name there. But Delby Lameau was invited to the Senior Bowl from offensive lineman from Dartmouth. He was a college tackle. I have him listed as a guard on my board.
Awesome. Tony, anything else before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, it's going to start to get real busy. It's going to start to get real fun. So we'll have our preview for the Shrine Bowl next week. We'll know who won the national championship. We'll know if Dante Moore and Ty Simpson have officially entered the draft. So it's going to be an interesting, week or so now.
Absolutely. Not to mention all the coaching searches going on in the National Football League. With keen interest in that, obviously, here with the Giants as we try to figure out what's going to go on with that. And then, of course, you have all the draft stuff. You have the divisional round of the playoffs, which, I mean, we've had some really good playoff games recently, which have been good. Hopefully get 4 more good ones this weekend. And then we'll see where we head into this NFL offseason, which really is not an offseason for the record. Tony, good stuff, my friend. We'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Look forward to it, John.
Oh, anything coming up on Essentially Sports for you, by the way?
We'll have a updated big board by the end of this week. We'll also have an updated 2-round mock draft. I was going to hand in the 2-round mock, and then what was happening is I was finding out the guys that were in the mock had announced late that they were staying in school, and I said, enough with this. I'm just going to wait till the end of the week to do it.
Wait till the official announcements get made. For Tony Pauline, I am John Schmelk. We'll see you next time on Draft Season, brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants.